The West Puget Community Connection Podcast. This is where we learn about the people of our community. We learn what they do, and more importantly, why they do it. Subscribe by email at westpugetcommunityconnection.com. We look forward to learning more about you. The West Puget Community Connection Podcast is brought to you in part by mywebdesignservices.com. Quick, easy, affordable websites that look amazing across all devices. For a quote or to get started today, visit mywebdesignservices.com. Welcome to the West Puget Community Connection Podcast, where we learn about the people in our community, what they do, and more importantly, why they do it. Our mission is to stimulate community engagement by creating a sense of community and rapport. We do that through interviews and storytelling with locals. You can listen to the podcast for free with unlimited streaming on our homepage at westpugetcommunityconnection.com. Contact us if you're interested in advertising or being featured on the show. And now, without further ado, we bring you this episode of the West Puget Community Connection Podcast. Welcome, everyone. This is Vincent Alexander. I'm the host of the show, and this will be part 2 of our interviews with Jaques Thiry, captain of the Unicorn. And I thought I'd give a little explanation on the intro of this episode. We recorded the first interview, part 1, last week. And when Jaques heard it published, he noticed that he felt a little disappointed. It's not that he didn't enjoy sitting with me and sharing his stories, just that the content of the episode didn't really express what was important to Jaques. It didn't meet his need for meaning and self-expression. So he wanted this opportunity to talk about what's really important to him before we go on telling any more stories about sailing around the world in a magical sailboat called the Unicorn. So we're going to take a pause in the storytelling in the adventures of Jaques Thiry and the Unicorn, and we're going to talk about what's really important to Jaques, what he really wants to leave behind in this world, the message that he wants to leave behind. And it's all about finding the meaning in life and filling that void in your heart. So keep listening. It's about to get real interesting. I really enjoyed sitting with Jaques today and hearing what he had to say about all this, and I'm really excited to share it with you. So sit back and enjoy this episode, which is part 2 of the interviews with Jaques Thiry. Yeah. So to reiterate what you just said there is that there's some aspects of your past and your story and your history that you get to a certain age and it seems like some of the things in the past are irrelevant. They're not important. And it's not really what you want to be sharing with the world, because
that's right.
You realize that you've come to some crossroads and you've revealed some values, some things that are important to you that you would really like to represent and express and share with the world. And this is who I am. This is what's important to me. This is what I want to share with the world. And so, did I get that right?
Yeah,
okay,
you got that right.
I'll let you pick up from there.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to be remembered because you did this, and this is where it stops, and this is where your eulogy, if such there is, become wrapped up around, oh wow, he did this
he
and
sailed
that.
the Unicorn ship.
Yeah, God, he did, he had this sailing ship called the Unicorn, and he did this, and, and certainly I could go on and telling stories about the Unicorn, but,
But there's something more important to you to share with the world.
Absolutely, because when it was all said and done, and I used to be able to say when when the Unicorn story ended, in the way that it did. Oh wow, I lost my right arm because I was so, this was my thing. And, well, I didn't lose my right arm. I didn't lose anything. I gained. I gained by having done it and having realized that that was not what was so important. That there was far more to life than
accomplishing sailing around the world.
Yeah, or whatever. Where is the soul? Where is the person? Where is the connection with other people? Because essentially, when it's all said and done.
So is that what's the important thing that you want to share with the world? Is this what's important to you? Is connection with other people?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Your soul is...
Yeah, because essentially, and I've said it 100 times, if I've said it one time, I was seeking for a spiritual connection, which at the time I was not having. Certainly there were some spectacular moments while we were sailing the ship in, down in Central America or...
oh, it's okay. There were some spectacular
moments. There were some moments
but then there was this...
wow, isn't this the most incredible
spectacle
place? Yeah,
experience. And but there was something missing, you said.
Yeah, the connection with a deeper, you could use the word God, the universe, whatever.
A deeper meaning in life.
A deeper meaning in life, and that essentially it's all about people. It's about
people.
Yeah, it's about the connection that we have with each other, whatever it is you do to get to that point, and whatever I do to get to that point, we meet in one place, and that one place is the love that we have for humanity, for each other, the feelings that we have. All of these things are really, those are important things. And it took me a long while in my life, in progression. I had to go through all of the things, including this whole unicorn story and so on and so forth, and beyond, because when it was over, fast forward 10 years, I was still seeking to repeat it in one form or another, and it took a while. Then I met someone that was important to me in a sense that it was a good friend of mine who she is still to this day, and I connect with her often enough. She spoke a language that I hadn't heard before, which was a more soulful expression of how I needed to look at things. And because, when it's all said and done, and it's one of my favorite phrases, all said and done, but we are today by the decision that we made yesterday, last week, last month, last year, and the decades before, and we follow on through, and either you are accepting of that, or else you get into a position of blaming someone else for not having...
So can I tell you what I'm hearing?
Sure.
That who you are today, where you are, and the way that you're experiencing yourself in your life is the product of decisions you've made in the past leading up to that. It's beliefs you decided to believe in, and experiences you decided to have, and the way you decided to to behave. And if you don't take responsibility for that, then you may be up in your head blaming,
Absolutely.
it was this person, it was that circumstance.
Exactly.
That's why I am the way I am.
Exactly. Exactly. That is what I'm saying. And that's essentially, you know, well, you look at the world that we are into. Let's not look at the world per se, but let's look at America.
Okay.
And the black and white dichotomy of what, and people can't talk to each other.
Oh, blaming.
It's always the other guy down on the other side, and
it's this classification of people that are the problem, or it's this label of people that's the problem.
Absolutely.
And so, while we're blaming others, we're not taking responsibility.
Absolutely. You have to look within, and say, he or she is a human being. They may think differently, but they have the same needs that you do, and, give them respect.
The benefit of the doubt.
The benefit of the doubt.
That they are human.
And how they got to those thoughts and expressions of themselves, or hey, that's fine. I can get along with this person regardless.
I can make space for their experience.
Absolutely, because essentially, when I travel, and I've traveled extensively, I ended up realizing that, no matter where you go, people put on their pants one leg at a time, and they don't do anything much different than I do, even though they may look differently, they may eat differently.
Think differently.
Yeah, think differently.
React differently.
But they are all together the same as I am. They have the same needs, and that essentially awakened me quite a bit to begin with. And then further on, I essentially moved to this particular community. Why am I in Port Townsend? I mean, what is it about Port Townsend? Certainly, the scenery is a major
to look at.
Major draw, but
and the weather. But
when we were traveling, my wife and I, we ended up in going down south. We went down to Arizona, Nevada, California, all of that, looking for a ideal place to live, because where we were living, we were having a problem with the neighbor that we had considered was a normal guy and had totally was going to make a good neighbor. We sold him the land that he got, and he ended up building a big house on it, over 3,500 square feet, and he copped an attitude about it because, compared to what we had, he was king of the hill, and his attitude changed literally overnight.
Wow.
And it became a situation that was untenable. And so even though we liked living where we were living, we chose to get an older motorhome, and we went on the road looking to see if there was another location on the Pacific side where we could
belong.
Yeah, belong, and we went as far south as near the Mexican border, and looking, and but the weather conditions were telling us that during the summer we wouldn't
want to be there.
We wouldn't want to be there,
yeah.
And so we ended up following the road all the way on the edge of the ocean, 101, California, Oregon, and in the state of Washington, and made a right-hand turn when it came to Forks, and followed it all the way. Ended up in
Squim?
Yeah, we ended up in Squim because someone that we met down in Arizona said, "Oh, if you're on your way home to Republic, which Route 20 takes you all the way there, you could stop at my place. I have 3 plus acres, and I have a barn on there with a plug-in for a motorhome and so on and so forth, and you can stay as long as you want, and as long as you mow the fields." And
What a deal.
I have the equipment. I said, "Well, okay." So we were driving along, and I was looking to my left, heading east, and I said, "Jesus, look
beautiful?
at this. The Strait of Juan de Fuca.
Yeah.
You can see Canada across the way." And I look to my right and look at these snow-capped mountains. I said, what were we looking for down in California? I said, it's right here, 300 miles from home. We drove 7,000 miles to get to here and said, this is it. And while this was happening, we were listening to Louise Hayes, who...
Louise Hay.
Louise Hayes, she had this program on bringing on speakers, philosophical speakers such as Deepak Chopra and, Neil Donald Walsh and people like that. Every day for 1 hour, we would tune on to that and listen to what they had to say, and it was so inspiring. And that at one point we said, well, at one time I had heard that there was a community called Unity that had, and I had heard a speaker from that speaking, and I remember it. And I said, I wonder if there is a spiritual center nearby. And lo and behold, there was one that we had already passed and one that was up ahead. And I said, let's go and check them out. Since then, we connected, and we connected with a community that was spiritually aware. And
right.
My wife and I, we have done a fair amount of workshops in regard to self-development and improvement, and we were attuned to looking for that if we stumbled into it.
I'm just going to put this here in case there's any wind.
Okay. It'll pick it up there?
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, let's go and see them. And we did. They accepted us with open arm. We connected with people that were, I would say, by the average of everyday life, remarkable, really notable. And to this day, this is why I am here. It's my hook, I call it, that keeps me in Port Townsend. Mind you, the scenery is definitely very appealing to someone like myself, but the community is what does it. Yeah, because, as you progress in life, you get to a point where you're focusing more on not what you have in order to describe yourself, and or what you do.
Or what you do.
Or you're not any of that. That's not who you are.
Yeah.
And, Okay, I've been here in Port Townsend nearly 5.5 years now. So you could say, well, you're now 80 years old. You just celebrated your birthday a few months ago, and that is a landmark. Yeah, okay. It's a landmark in a sense that I've lived long enough to arrive at this point. But there was a time when, my father passed away when he was 69, and when that happened, I was in my 40s, and I thought, man, if I ever live to be that age, oh wow, I've got another 20-some years in front of me, and well, he's long gone, and now I'm way past where he had lived, and I wish I could talk to him in the manner that I'm talking about this now.
Yeah.
Because he would get it, and he was an individual that had a big soul, tortured by the events of his life, but he would get it. And so I'm blessed to have arrived at where I'm at, and haven't gotten.
You're really glad that you
my goodness,
come into the awareness,
absolutely,
and the perspective.
Absolutely, it's it's the kind of thing as you progress on and beyond the adventures of the unicorn, and I met my wife, who was a very aware person, of spiritually aware, and had taken a sort of course, had dabbled into this area and to that area, and she met me, and she awakened what I was looking for, and that is, who am I really? And oftentimes, even to this day, she said, you lead with the unicorn and your stories of sailing and traveling and all that in order to describe yourself. And she did that recently, and in a meeting that we were having with a group of people. And I respect her opinion, and she's correct. When I cannot think of anything to say about who are you, well, my life has been, and then it ends up talking about the unicorn, which doesn't say anything about me.
This is not really meeting your need for expressing authentically what's really important to you.
Absolutely. And she said, you got to stop that. You got to talk about who you are now, not who you were then.
Not what you did.
Who cares about the unicorn and sailing, and doing all of these things? It's
a fun story.
It's a fun story.
Yeah,
and,
it takes people on an adventure.
Yeah,
but it's not meaningful enough.
That's right.
Of an expression of who you are. And you want the world to know what's important to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sure, I have a slideshow of the whole period of my life of doing this and that. And in the first podcast, I talked about the
storyline of how you found the unicorn.
Yeah, how we found the unicorn, and before.
Maybe we should put this window up if you don't mind.
Sure.
So the first podcast, we covered the story from birth all the way up to
and the part that I said at the time, which is relevant, where I was born, the kind of people that essentially raised a child, me, in in a time of strife during a war and the ramification and all of this, and what my parents did during that period of time, and where was I in the picture of it all. And as I grew up, and the following up of having tuberculosis and all of this, and then ending up coming to America when I was 16 and all of this. There's a whole chapter of adventures that took place there. There is essentially a foundation to where I'm at now.
Oh.
That's all it is. It could have been a different story, and would I have been where I am now? It's hard to know. You essentially, I think that a certain amount of trials and tribulation needs to happen in one's life in order to get beyond it and to get to a place where you really get it, and
where you reflect on what's important
on
at the
what's
end
important.
of the day.
Absolutely. And you cannot get that, I think, short of having lived through those periods.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
It really, and I don't deny that people use religion as a means of connecting with themselves. Obviously, that's part and parcel of what the religion is about, is to try to bring a context of the human condition. But I didn't have that. My parents were not religious at all, in any way, shape, or form. And so, but I knew that there was somewhere along the way, I knew that there was a connection with a bigger picture. And I couldn't touch it until I had to go through
your trials,
and it took a bunch of years for me to acknowledge this. The successes were celebrated by thinking I was, king of the hill, and the failure was like, fortunately, I was able to look at the failures as, well, this is not going to defeat me, and I'm going to continue, and I'm going to succeed, and so succeed at what? I was never asking that question. What was I succeeding at? And what? I mean, to be a sailor, to be, the reason I went on I used the water as a means of escapism.
Right. You needed solitude and peace.
I needed the solitude, and what was so important that I needed that as opposed to going inland? It was because of the foundation of
conflict that you had experienced.
That's right, with my family. You see, my parents and I, we were. There was a major conflict going on with my mother and father in respect to me as the only child, and I needed to get away from that situation, and so we were fortunate that they had chosen to live in an area of the state of New Jersey where the water was like literally in our backyard, and I would essentially use whatever means I could to get on the water and to get away from it all and spend hours and hours by myself and go through the process of fighting this problem that I was having. There was a lot of discontentment on my part for being saddled with two people who had their own battle to wage.
You were in pain.
I was in pain during that time.
And you were escaping that pain
I was escaping
by getting
that
on
pain
the water and floating and drifting away to be alone. And meanwhile, while you're out there, you were up in your head trying to process all the pain and trying to understand the meaning of it all.
Absolutely.
Trying to find your peace.
And once I was able to leave home, and it took, I would say, it took a good 10 years to find a certain level of evenness instead of the craziness of all the stuff that I got involved into, going to Europe, North Africa, Scandinavia, and traveling around and just trying to find a level of contentment by doing.
By doing. Yeah.
And I wasn't finding it.
You weren't finding it. It wasn't filling the hole.
It was not filling.
No matter how much you sailed and drifted, and no matter how much...
It didn't make any difference. That was not where peace and... Fulfillment and inside loving of people and finding that essentially you and I and everyone else, we're all trying to live the good life and to be happy with what you have.
An enriched life.
Absolutely.
Like really, really rich, meaningful life while we're still here. Don't waste it. Make it worth it.
Don't waste it. And every day is important. Every moment is important. And so that to come back to what I said earlier is that the decision that you made yesterday, it's ancient history. It doesn't matter. It's where you're at now. And, that's why the first podcast...
Part one of our interviews.
Yeah, part one of our interview was essentially disturbing insofar as once I listened to it, I said,
"This isn't what's important to share with the world.
This is not what okay, fine." And I could go on telling stories, but I'm really not interested in telling stories about...
It doesn't represent what's really important to you.
It's not who I am now.
It's not who you are now.
It's not who I am now.
Right.
And I'm at a stage in life where, I seek connection with others.
You seek connection with others. That's what you've come to in life.
I do. This is, I'm almost at a stage where I can say I don't know a stranger that I can't call friend.
Wow.
Because
you give them the benefit of the doubt that this is a human.
Absolutely.
And I could understand them.
And they have their own story, which if they choose to share, wonderful, we will listen. But the point is who are you? What do you stand for?
What's important in life?
Yeah, and I have right now where I live a new neighbor, a gentleman who came and bought the piece of land in front of me and built a really nice home and a big garage where he's going to bring all his antiques. He's in the process of finishing the garage where he's going to bring all his antique cars into it and so on and so forth. And what political persuasion he's at. I'm told that he's, more on the right than he is on the left. So what?
So
I care about the man far above and beyond what he believes politically
right.
or anything like that.
Uh-huh.
And it's a joy for me to see him, and I feel, based on the greetings that he shares when he sees me, that he feels the same way, and that's what's important, And
you said the greetings that he shares when he sees you.
He just he expressed a joy of seeing me as the person that I am, and we are diametrically opposed. Whereas I have very little financially, and he has very much more than I do financially, was able to build what he's done. He is all of these things, and as I say to him, I say, good for you, this is the results of decisions that you made in the past that got you to be able to do what you're doing. And I said, wonderful.
What's important is that his heart is filled.
Yeah.
Maybe this doesn't fill his heart to have a big house, but what's important is that his heart is filled one way or another.
Yeah, and he expressed himself in a manner, and he and his wife expressed themselves in a manner that shows me that they are the people that I respect, that
you enjoy being,
that I enjoy
connecting.
Spending time with, and so on. And but that's
you feel comfortable with them, huh?
Yeah, very comfortable with them, but there are thousands of people around that if we took the time to acknowledge them, we would find they are just the people that you're looking for to be associated with and to be connecting with.
And it's not the house they live in or the ship that they sailed.
No, none of that has anything.
It's the way they greet you.
Yeah, exactly. And my friend George and my friend Sam, both George and Sam are my neighbors, and they're just, they're wonderful people, and that's all.
You really enjoy.
I enjoy
their
seeing
presence,
them, and it's a pleasure to have them as friends.
Community.
Yeah, they're part of my community now, and I'm part of theirs. And
oh wow, I'm getting really awesome feelings talking about this.
And it's a blessing to be alive. It really is. It's a blessing to be alive. It's a blessing to have arrived at this point in my life. Is it the end of the story? Probably not.
To realize what's important?
Yeah, because, you don't know it when you don't see it. But when you see it, you know it. You know that is...
So you can drift around the world with a hole in your heart, not knowing what will fill that hole.
Yep.
But then once your heart is filled, you say, "Oh, I found what I was looking for."
I found what I was looking for, and that's where.
What was it?
And
what is that?
Essentially, the love for other people.
Love for people.
Love for people. That's what you have to acknowledge. And
focus on
the LOVE word, which is scary to some people, don't ever want to mention it in one breath, as opposed to other things that are more mundane, the way the car is, or the kind of car that you drive, as opposed to what someone else can have. And unfortunately, the whole of society as we are now, you know, you look at the advertising, it's a form of brainwashing.
Brainwashing, material.
You have got to have this car because when you drive this car, you are seen as having made it. You're driving a Jaguar.
You will have respect for yourself, and others will have respect for you.
Yeah, because of the way. Oh God, they can afford this car.
Because they'll perceive you as
they must be
worthy.
Yeah.
As though people who drive Honda Civics are not worthy.
Are not worthy at all. I mean, that's what it's telling you. And once you understand that, it says this is all BS.
This is damaging.
It's damaging. Absolutely.
It's confusing. And it separates us from what's really important in life.
From what's really important. And that's really, where the rubber meets the road. You cannot look at someone's big house, 3 cars in the garage, and all of this, and say, "Yeah, wow, man, I wish I had that." I don't wish I had it. I don't want any of it.
I don't need it.
No, I don't need it. That doesn't say anything about me.
That won't fill my heart. That won't help me feel better about myself.
It will not. And, and certainly you could say, well...
Some pleasure there, too.
Yeah, there's...
Some luxury or leisure.
God, if you had the money, what would you do?
Life would be easier, maybe.
Well, I'm one of those weird individuals that always fantasize that if I had the money, what would I do? And my inner wish would be essentially anonymously donate to people who don't have enough.
Oh, wow.
And just send them a check or make available a sum of money that would make a difference in their life.
Oh wow.
That's what I would do.
That's what you would do.
That's what I would
give to people in need.
Absolutely, because, when it's all done, what happens? You've accumulated all this stuff.
Right.
House, car, garage,
or
property,
hoarding.
and all of this. Uh-huh. And when the day comes that it's over, you all leave it behind.
Oh wow!
I mean,
how much more satisfying to take all that wealth and distribute it to the people who are suffering, who their lives would be enriched by it.
Yeah, and give them a chance to get out of the hole that they're in.
Right.
And
not suffer so much.
And maybe some of them would go and do exactly what you're trying to avoid doing. And some would see the value of what happened to them. I could tell you a story.
Sure.
Of the unicorn, for instance.
Uh-huh.
In 1975,
uh-huh.
I was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Uh-huh.
And we had just gone through a very tough period with the ship. We were down in Honduras when a hurricane came through called Hurricane Fifi, and which we were forced to ride at anchor, and it damaged the ship, and we had to bring it back to the U.S. to get the work done because there was nowhere else to do that down in the Caribbean. And while in Florida, the crew scattered and went their own way, including my partner, Perty. He went his own way, and there I sat on board the vessel by myself with my girlfriend at the time, and we were two people trying to figure out where to go from there. This gentleman walked on board, and his first thing he says, he says, my name is Bill Smith. Well, okay. Plenty of Bill Smiths in the world, millions of them. He said, I have been following you all over the Caribbean, trying to catch up with you. And every time I get there, you're already on your way to somewhere else.
Wow.
And he says, now here you are. And he says, God, he said, why are you here? And so I start telling him my story, and of course, you have a ship that has a damaged bow that needs to be repaired before you can go on anywhere, and you don't have the means to do that, and you don't know how this is going to be done. And he says, I have plenty of time if you don't mind telling me what your life story is and how did you acquire the ship and so on and so forth. So we sit there for several hours, I telling him
the sequence of events.
The whole sequence of events and so on and so forth. And he says, absolutely fascinating. He said, do you mind if I come back and talk to you some more? I said, no, you're catching me on a day where I'm basically sitting here scratching my head trying to figure out what to do, and I said, you're welcome to come back. You're the only distraction in this whole process. And he went away. About an hour later, the offices of the port of Laudania, which is where we were, part of the Fort Lauderdale setup, called me and told me, Mr. Thiry, he said, you had a visitor on board your ship. And I said, yeah. And to describe the man is, here he is in a coffee shirt from South America with the sleeves cut off, a pair of chinos with cut off as a pair of shorts, and an old pair of sandals on. And there he is, crew cut. And that was it. That was the man.
Simple.
And he said, his name is Bill Smith. And I said, yeah. I said, that's what he said. And he says, William Wyckoff Smith. That's correct, yeah. And he says he's one of the wealthiest men in America. And he would like to buy your ship. And, right away, it's not for sale. He said, well, he wants to come back and talk to you some more and make you an offer. Well, he said he's coming back on Monday, so,
I'll see him on Monday.
Yeah, I'll see him on Monday. And he said, don't just dismiss them out of hand. And so fast forward 3-4 days, and here comes on Monday, and there's Bill one more time. And he said, now, if you had the money to fix, what would you do? And I said, well, I would fix the bow. All the planking near the edge of the bow through the deck had been sewn up by the chain riding during the storm. And I said, all of that needs to be replaced. And I said, I would fix that. And a few other things on board, get a crew back on the ship, and continue doing what I've done. He says, okay, let's say that you had far more money than that. What would you do? And I said, well, let me say, what do you mean by far more money? Let's say that you were able to have access to all the money you needed. What would be your plan? I said, well, plan B, I would, remove the engine that's in the ship right now and put an engine that really
Moves the boat.
moves the ship in a much more
More than 150 horsepower.
yeah, much more than 150 horsepower. He said, okay. Ultimately, he said, if you had all the money in the world, oh well.
Wow. Dream scenario.
Yeah, and I said, well, I'd have to think about it. And he said, why don't you do that? And he says, put it on paper, and I'll come back.
He wanted a fantastic vision.
I'll come back again and give you a full opportunity to think about what you would do if that money was there.
Uh-huh.
So my friend and I, we drew it all up on paper, made calculation, decided where we would take the ship to have it fixed, to have it done this, to have done that, so on and so forth. And a few days later, there comes Bill Smith once again, and I said, well, there's plan A, plan B, and plan C. And plan C is what we called elegancia. And he said, well, let me see what plan C is.
Yeah,
and he looked at plan C, and he says, okay. He says, yeah, I see where you're going with that. And he said, all right. He says, but I see that you're looking at fixing it well enough to take it to foreign land. I had ideas of taking it to China, where I had connections to be able to work on it at very reasonable cost. And he said, I live 5 miles away from this shipyard. And he says, my wife really likes me to be home at night. And he said, I would like it to do it right here in this
To do all those things that you want to do in China, right here in Fort Lauderdale.
Right here in Fort Lauderdale. And I said, Mr. Smith, no, it's Bill. I said, okay, Bill. I said, this is probably the most expensive shipyard in the United States.
Yeah, why would we choose this place to do it?
He said, this is where I want to do it.
Uh-huh.
I said, okay. I said, well, what proposition do you have? He said, let me say that I'm going to own the ship, 80% of it. 20% of it is going to stay in your possession. I'm going to give you all the money you have ever dreamed of having. And he says, we'll cap it, open a bank account, and we'll cap it at $50,000 a week. That was in 1975. Yeah.
Jeez,
he says, you can spend that much per week, and I will replenish it to that amount every single week for as long as it takes to get the ship
the way you have
dreamed. Because he says, I'm not buying the ship, I'm buying the 6 inches between your ears.
Wow.
That's what I'm buying.
Yeah, he wanted
your dream. What it is you would do
your
with it.
dream to do what you would do with it, because you know that shit better than anyone.
And so we did. So
you did it.
The story, what happened, is not relevant to what we started talking about. The point is here was all the money available, I mean, God, I spent in 1975, 76, I don't even know what amount of money that would be today, but I spent $1,400,000 of his money.
Well, $1.4 million you spent
Yeah.
Making the
Making the
unicorn
dream.
fantastic.
Fantastic. Yeah, and that's how she ended up looking in the filming of Roots and all of that. But what was this individual, this man called William Wyckoff Smith? He was an exceptional guy. He really was. He passed away while we were in the process of finishing the ship.
No kidding.
Yeah, and his widow honored him by continuing the project all the way to the end.
Oh.
But it's appointing.
What drove him to do this?
There's a case in point. Is that, having the money to do whatever it is you do, it has some serious advantage. I totally agree with that. And insofar as, you want a big house, well, if you have the money, you have a big house built. Whatever it is that turns you on, you can certainly do it. But does it describe who you are? No.
No.
No, that's just
what you do.
That's just what you do. This is what you have, but it doesn't say anything about you. That individual was somebody that was, if he was still around today, I know that he and I would be on the same page. And
you seem to connect with his motivations.
Absolutely, and I understood. And yes, the ship, when it was all said and done, it looked the same, but yet not the same as to when we sailed it under our ownership. I preferred it in the original format, but he wanted to be able to offer an experience for kids who were underprivileged and had come across on the bad side of the law and were essentially put into the
correctional institution.
So I ended up with 60 of these kids working on the ship in the shipyard where we were, and to this day I still have relationship with these cadets.
Wow. Cadets. So he saw a different kind of opportunity. It wasn't, how can I make money off of this ship? It was, what can I give to you?
To me.
And to these cadets.
But to the cadets, to the kids. And that's what he wanted. He wanted me to come up with a format with the ship that would be, more of a school ship than what I had.
An educational experience.
Yeah, an educational experience, and that's what it became for about a year, 2.5 years period, and that's what money can do.
You can make things happen.
You can make things happen. Is it the only way? No, it's not. Not at all. There are thousands of people doing marvelous things with zero money.
Oh yeah.
In all form of life, and that was his expression of his inner self.
To do something marvelous. To give back.
To give back, and so I essentially brought the story on because we were talking about,
the meaning
having
of life.
or not having the means.
Having or not having the means.
We all have the means, but it may not be in dollars and cents. It may be in another form. and to give back.
We have the means to give back.
We have the means to give back.
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean you're spending money to give back.
No, no, no. It doesn't. It doesn't have to necessarily. It's great when it does, and it moves certain people forward. You know.
That's one way to do it.
But
what's important is giving back.
You could say, well, you could talk about, well, give me another example. Well, you could say, well, Gandhi, to begin with. Mother Teresa was another. I mean, there are people who gave and gave and gave.
Yet they were poor.
And they were poor.
Oh, good idea. Yeah, thank you for the example. Yeah, that's a good point.
You see? I mean, that's the point. I mean, it's not the end all to have to, in order to build a career and build a profession that makes you well off enough to be able to give. Generally speaking, unfortunately, people get trapped into having, to be. And having the status, what society considers successes, and what is that? Well, it can be, I admire people who are doctors. I admire people who give.
Give. That's the word that keeps coming up.
Executive of big corporation. I'm sure there are some who are who give back.
And why would we give? Okay, sorry.
But truly, it's not obvious. Certainly not in the world that we live in now. If anything, it's quite the contrary.
Oh, I see. And there's people who are giving and they don't get recognized for it.
No, they don't get recognized for it, and nor, for that matter, do they want to be known for it. They're more into be known for their achievement, business-wise or politically, and so on and so forth. And
interesting.
That's, as far as I'm concerned, the place where I want to express myself. And the unicorn, yeah, okay, fine.
It's something to talk about.
It's something to talk about, but it's
not the point.
It's not the point, and it's not me.
And it's not you. It's not what you are.
It's not who I am.
It's not what you don't want to be remembered as. Just someone who sailed.
No, I mean,
but someone who,
you want to hear a interesting story, I can give you that.
But you want to be remembered.
Does it say anything about me? No, it doesn't. No. That's the point.
Right.
Circumstance came along where I was able to do that. But that's all you can say. What if I had chosen to be, because mountain climbers are in the news these days, a mountain climber, and I'd climb Everest when Everest were not overrun like it is today. It's in the news where they've got, 200 people climbing Mount Everest. There is a chain of them going up and up, and of course some are falling off and dying on the process. Irregardless, I could have been a mountain climber. I like climbing, and I didn't go that way. Yesterday I spent time at the airport and right here in Port Townsend with my son, and we spent an hour and a half eating and watching people flying. It was a great day for flying, and there were a dozen planes that ended up taking off, and we watched them all and speculated, I could have gone in that direction, because I have taken, 27 hours of flying time way back in the 60s, and, I couldn't afford the cost of the lessons in those days, so. But the wind and the sea and boats were still free at that time, and so I decided, well, this is far less expensive. Solitude can be had this way, and that's
the way you went.
I
so
went.
you could have been a mountain climber,
Yeah.
you could have been a pilot, but you were a sailor, and it doesn't matter.
And it doesn't matter. This is how I chose to live my life.
To spend your time.
And spend my time, and a whole lot of lifestyle developed out of it, and it leads me to today, enjoying, reflecting on it, but not focusing on it as a description of who I am.
Okay, so what's in your heart that you want to express of who you are?
Absolutely.
This is much more important than...
Much more important to me than...
what you did.
Yeah. And
it sounds like it's about giving.
It's about giving. It really is. It's about giving. It's about connecting. It's about...
seeing the human.
Touching.
Connecting.
And that really is where I see it, is where it's all about.
Oh, man, that's making a lot of sense now. I'm just thinking in terms of, like you said, when your life comes to an end, you could have this huge portfolio of assets and all this money that you accomplished in a bank account, but if you could step back 5 years and go around giving that away to people in need, then you lay your head down, and you're like, all right, I like what I did with all that money.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's about giving.
Yeah, and
that brings meaning to life.
Absolutely. Then you get to understand that there's more to life than owning it or being, and so on and so forth. And I don't want to denigrate people who have gone into whatever profession it may be to achieve those things. I mean, they did what they chose to do and were successful at it, and they have stories to tell about it. But who are they really?
And how satisfied will they be when on their deathbed with what they did with all that success?
And and I'm sure that some people will say, well, I developed this fortune which I will leave to my kids or grandkids and so on and so forth.
That's giving.
That's
giving to your family.
Yeah, giving to your family. I don't deny that there's a value there.
And giving to yourself too. Sometimes success is giving yourself a gift.
Absolutely.
Because you're fulfilling a dream.
Yeah, and this is where I feel the whole thing is about, and
giving. Wow.
I mean, look at the gift that we're having now by looking at the scenery. I mean, it's just amazing,
It's so beautiful.
It's a blessing. It's a blessing to be here. And on this note, I think I'll
end this
for now, and perhaps we'll revisit some more of it.
All right. Thank you for sharing what's in your heart.
That's really what I wanted to say regarding the first podcast, which
what's really important to you.
I did not like it in the sense that it was reviewing
events and what you did and what you accomplished.
All of this, and it didn't say anything about me as a person and what I feel is important in life. So
okay.
Well,
thank you, Jaques Thiry, for part 2.
Yep.
And if you'd like to share a part 3, I look forward to that as well.
Okay, Vincent. I think we'll do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the West Puget Community Connection podcast. Be sure to catch the next episode. Sign up for our email list at westpugetcommunityconnection.com, and you'll be notified when new episodes are published. And if you're interested in advertising or being featured on the show, you can contact us through our website as well, westpugetcommunityconnection.com. The West Puget Community Connection podcast is brought to you in part by mywebdesignservices.com. Quick, easy, affordable websites that look amazing across all devices. For a quote or to get started today, visit mywebdesignservices.com. The West Puget Community Connection Podcast. This is where we learn about the people of our community. We learn what they do, and more importantly, why they do it. Subscribe by email at westpugetcommunityconnection.com. We look forward to learning more about you.